My name is Ciara Nanny, and this is my great-grandmother, Doris Keller. We will be talking to you today about the Great Depression. Okay, so how old were you during the Depression?
I was born in 1930, and the Depression had already started, so I know more about it kind of in the middle of the Depression.
All right. What do you remember about the Depression?
Well, I remember that my daddy worked for $1 a day, and that he spent his days with a shovel because he was working for a gas company, and they had a lot of pipes to put under the ground. He didn't have a job. He moved from his home in Missouri, and he came to Oklahoma because they told him there were some jobs there. I don't know how detailed I need to tell you this, but he left and sold his family home, and he came to this place where they had the oil company, and they called him rough something when they were the diggers for all those pipes they had to have. And they didn't have a job for him for a lot of days. I don't remember them saying how many. But my dad would come every day. He'd be dressed for work, and he had his lunch. And he'd just come back every day, every day, every day. I don't know how many days. But finally the boss said, "Put that guy to work." And so he worked for the $1 a day.
Describe your home and family circumstances.
Well, by the time I can remember anything, they had houses kind of like they do around here. What do they call those? Where they worked in the mills. And you're going to have to stop it because I lost my train of thought.
It's okay. Mill houses.
Yeah.
She was asking you about your family and your home circumstances.
And this little house was like a box. It was a nice little house, but it was a house that was like a box, and there were no hallways in there. So we had, and on the back, it was made sort of like a shed back there, but it was part of the house. And that was the kitchen and a bathroom. And we had running water, which wasn't what most people had. Most people did not have running water in their house. And my mother had the first refrigerator. It was a gas refrigerator. It didn't work very well, but she had the first one in the area. And we managed very well.
At least you have a refrigerator.
We had a refrigerator. And my daddy worked 2 jobs, so we had plenty to eat. He loved to be the gardener, and he worked all day in the garden, and then he worked at night. After he had to come up in the company far away, he wasn't the digger anymore. But those people who lived around us who did not have a company to work for were very bad off. Very bad off. None of them had water in their homes, and there wasn't much water outside either. And they didn't have jobs. They hardly had food. And my mother would go out to those houses and help them. She would make dresses for the little children and pick them up. Sometimes she brought them home and gave them a bath, and she would get them ready for church. And sometimes she didn't get them cleaned up, and so somebody said, "Why do you bring those children home to give them a bath?" And my mother would say, "Because nobody would sit by me if I didn't." But it was hard going.
A lot of work. Lots of work.
Lots of doing without what you needed.
Mm.
A lot of families slept on a mattress on the floor, all of them.
So you sort of already answered this question, but did you know anyone who lost his or her job?
Yeah, everybody was out of a job. Everybody. Unless they had, in that area, if you didn't work for a company, like a gas company or an oil company, you were bad off.
Were there any most common jobs available? I said that wrong.
That's all right.
Okay.
Where?
What were the most common jobs available?
For the oil companies.
What was was there a food shortage?
Well, not at my house. My daddy was a gardener. He worked hard all day, and we had, at that time, we had 2 cows and 2 horses, and we had 2 hogs, chickens, and my dad kept them well.
What did you usually eat in one day?
Whatever was in the garden or the cellar that we have prepared all year. We all worked in the summer to get all that food in the. We had a cellar, a cement cellar, and you'd go down under the ground, and that's how it kept the food. And we had more than we needed, so we shared a lot.
What are some lessons our country learned from the Depression?
You better work. You worked, or you, especially people with little ones, you better hunt a job. You better hunt a job. And there was people that moved around a lot. They'd go wherever there was any jobs. You can't believe how hard my daddy would work with that shovel for $1 a day. And I remember that the soft drinks cost a nickel.
What surprised you the most about your experiences?
Well, I was a tiny baby, came in the middle. I was always felt secure and happy. And what we did was go to school and church. And that's where we found our friends. And we had a happy family.
Tell about a very happy or very sad time during the Depression.
My parents didn't let us know about bad things. I was happy. I didn't have things like you have, like for Christmas. One year I would get a doll, and the next year my mother would make clothes for it. But that's okay. I was happy. I was happy.
What good things came from your experience?
To learn to really respect my parents. Yep. I think people who live with a little learn to respect.
Do you remember what the newspaper and radio said about the Depression?
No. Most people didn't have a radio. My dad had one, and And all the family listened to some things, but not much. We were too busy doing other things. My mother played with us at night, dominoes or making puzzles or whatever, and we were happy with it.
When you face with a problem, what did you and others do to handle the problem?
Sometimes parents moved from wherever they were and left their family and everything they had to go someplace where there was a job. Also, if you were around where there were oil companies and they were drilling, those they could only buy the tops. Let's see, how does that go? The companies bought the stuff that was underground. What do you call that?
The oil?
No.
The sub-earth?
Yeah. And then the top really didn't belong to the company. I think that's how it worked. And they would provide a place for like widows and people really in need. They'd give them a piece of property and they could live there as long as the company was there. And then they had to take everything off. So when I left, well, when the company was through, they took everything out of where I lived. The sidewalk, the street, the lights, the cellars, the homes, everything. And it was, again, for the cows. I bet they don't know that.
I had never heard that.
My grandma and my aunt and her family lived not too far from us, and my daddy would take them water. He had a barrel he put the water in, and then he made a sled, and he'd put it on the car, back of the car, take them water.
Have to take care of each other.
She didn't have a husband at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So this question might be a little confusing, but did your family lose money in the stock market? Like, did they talk about that, or do you not know?
They never talked about money to us. They just wanted us to be content and happy and not worry about that. And I'm sure we didn't have any except what was in the bank. My daddy would take me to the bank sometime, and I didn't like it. There was cigar smokes in there.
Was an experience that you and your family will never forget?
True.
Did it affect schools, and if it did, how bad?
Well, I went to a school where what do you call it? Where they had buses to go out all about 30 miles around and pick up. We had a very good school. We had a consolidated school. That's what it is. It was very good, and the children behaved very well. There was no problems in schools where I lived. And the school and the church were very intertwined. They were very helpful with each other.
That's the last question. Thank you for letting me interview you.
Glad to do it, my daughter.